edition of the LA Shoulder Podcast. This is the fourth guest I've had today. I'm very lucky to have Dr. Vani.
Yeah.
How do you say your last name?
Sabesan.
Sabesan.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned about Vani a long time ago by reading your papers. And I said, who is this Dr. Sabesan? Who's this guy? He must be a really smart researcher because I'm reading a lot of his important papers. Yeah. And it turns out you are a very lovely woman.
Yes.
And a shoulder specialist.
I am.
So we're here at the 2025 ASES shoulder and elbow meeting. And how are everything's going so far for you at the meeting?
Great. You know, it's always a pretty impressive meeting, mostly from the level of quality and content. But I mean, our subspecialty is really just a powerhouse. But I think what's cool about it is just the camaraderie. It's definitely like such a family. So I always love it.
You have a lot of friends here.
I do.
Yeah, I'm always hearing your name. Hi, Vani. Hey. You always have a nice group of people.
I think almost everybody does, right?
Yeah, well, I do too.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's fun. I mean, it's a social thing, but it's really, you're seeing people from all over the country you've known for either years, short time, long time, but they're really at this level where you can have these really high level conversations with pretty much whoever you run into.
Right.
And I've learned kind of how to learn from these meetings, per se. It's not just about going and listening to the lectures. You know, you can learn a lot just from conversations with people.
Yeah. And I think what's amazing is everyone's sort of in it for the right reasons, right? We're all here to improve shoulder care and here to push the envelope to make things better. And I just think that level of elevation, when everyone's swimming in the same direction, makes it so powerful.
Definitely. Yeah. You can work together in ways that can be beneficial. And that's what I like, you know, as a surgeon, I'm always trying to help out, you know, other surgeons. We take care of each other. And that's one thing that I've noticed in the field of shoulders.
Well, this meeting was all about wellness. So we got to start taking care of ourselves too.
It's a hot topic now. We're supposed to actually take care of ourselves now. Yeah. That was never, you're not supposed to learn about surgeon wellness. At meetings like that. So you're involved in some active groups that are women in orthopedics.
Yeah.
And there's a group that you were telling me about. They're called...
Well, I think there's two big ones that I think, I'm proud of. But this main one is kind of I would call it maybe a labor of love.
Is it your med moms?
Yeah, your med moms. And what's amazing about your med moms is this wasn't created by me. This was created by my mentees. You know, we had a really wonderful research fellow. She kind of was a superstar. You know, she's from the LA area. So welcome.
Her name?
Her name's Agnes Movasagi.
Oh, you were telling me about her, right? She's doing in orthopedics.
She grew up, in LA. Her mom's Latina and her dad is Persian, so she had a very interesting upbringing. But I think California and LA is like that. It's just the diversity.
Yeah, mixed population.
But she'd never had anyone that was in medicine, right? Her father's an immigrant, really never had a family member, not many friends. And so, when you go down this journey and you sort of grow up in the U.S. thinking that sort of there's certain career paths, when you don't have anyone to guide you, it can be a difficult path, and medicine is not easy nowadays. So your med mom is just really about the truth. It's like what you would ask your mom, right? Your mom sometimes tells you stuff that maybe is not always feel good, right? Yeah. But it's the honest truth,
Mom's
right?
Mom's going to tell you what you need.
She's going to tell you what you need. But you know what she does? She does it because she cares.
Right.
Because she wants you to succeed.
She's trying to guide you.
She's trying to guide you.
Even if it may not be right, she's trying to guide you, right? She's trying to give you good advice.
And so this is sort of what you would ask your mom and the harsh truth of life, right? Being a female in orthopedics, a female in shoulder surgery is not always an easy road, you know? And we want to, and our society is very accepting of women now, but the reality is there's just differences.
And why is that? Why do you think it's tougher?
I just think there's 6%. So when you're in the minority, I think there's some threshold studies that have been shown that I think you need 30% of anything, any group, to make it less of a numbers game. So that threshold, when you hit 30% of any field, they become the minority less. They're more of a majority speaking. So that when someone speaks, it's not that person being a woman, it's that person X, Y, and Z, right? Because it's a 30% threshold. And so we just haven't reached it in orthopedics. We haven't reached it in shoulder surgery. We haven't reached it in medical school. We have. So it's 50% women. So guess what? People don't identify by their gender in medical school, right? You don't think of a female med student or med student. No. You don't say that girl med student.
Right.
And I just think we haven't gotten there. And so I think the conversation, although important, really needs to be navigated, right? And I think we just have to be honest. The differences exist, and we're different. But, at the same time, there's so much beauty in that, right? And so...
Well, there's a lot of value, I think, in connecting with your role models, and one thing I learned a lot from fellowship was I had exceptional role models, and I've been talking to some other, surgeons about kind of the value of that, because even if you don't really know what you're doing, you see how they're doing and how their patients are doing. So if you can kind of mimic those roles, you eventually get to that status. And having more women as role models, I'm sure that's a very important thing for young women coming up in the field.
This is what my mentees created, a website, a community that they want to have more role models. So we created podcasts. We have forums for people. We are doing swag, right? So people wear with pride your badge of moms. And this idea that the conversation matters, the connections matter, the community matters, right? So if we can do that and be that and lift each other up, everybody's going to be better.
So they're the med moms. Yeah. They're the moms that are helping out the younger ones. So you don't have to be a mom.
You don't have to be a mom. Program. Yeah, I just interviewed Stephanie Mew, and she's not a mom, and that was a choice. And I think that's another important choice, right? Because there's a perception as a female that you have to be married with kids. Right. And if you don't do that, you're not successful.
Yeah, or you're failing at that because you're doing this. It's like, well, things are complex. Life is complex.
It is,
And even the surgical practice is not necessarily you're an orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah.
That's a very different role from somebody else. They might have a totally different practice setup, and their life would be very different. And then you have kids, and then you're a female, and you have to do all those things, and you're expected to, right? So, I think this is the age where we're kind of looking at all those roles again.
Right. And I think we're also looking at what success means and trying to really define that better, because I think, we were at a women's group in shoulder surgery.
Being happy too.
Yeah. Well, and just figuring out what is happiness, right? For everyone, it's different. And how do you get there? And I think in this overly connected world, right, sometimes you get information overload. And, we were talking about it, and Sarah Edwards gave a talk today, and she talked about, bad moms, so this perception that if I'm not at every...
What is that? What do you mean bad moms?
The movie.
Oh, the movie.
The movie.
Yeah, bad moms.
And so we think of ourselves, right, if we're not in the perfectly dressed and one of the other authors was talking about how she didn't show up with cookies for an event at school. And that's a perception that I failed at something. But maybe you flip the coin, I'm just really good at something else, right? And and I'm saving lives. I might not be bringing cookies to you. And so they're just our paradigm has to shift if we want to make ourselves right and whole.
Well, one thing that has really helped me is showing up to these meetings is kind of getting a sense of what other people are talking about, how they're treating things. And so to have women, to be able to talk to other women of what they're really going through, it's different. It's like, you can talk to me and I can tell you what my life is like. It's going to be different than yours, So
but I think ultimately, life is messy. And I think that it's okay to talk about that.
Both
guys
things are okay.
Or girls. Yeah. I don't think that's a gender thing. Trying to manage our kids, working as hard as we do. I think medicine has gotten a lot tougher, right? We are always connected as well, right? Your patients can my chart you. People can always, and so there's this idea that you have to always be on at everything. And men feel it too. I think dads feel it, moms feel it. This idea of you kind of really cannot disconnect and sort of regroup on what's important. And I think it's just really a perspective thing that over time, we want to be there for our patients, right? We want to be there for our family, that there are boundaries that we can set that make it okay.
What was the other group that you were
So, I think that there's the women in shoulder surgery.
That's what it is, women in shoulder surgery.
Well, and I just think that that's really become an entity, that, we take pride in. You see these women, like April Armstrong's going to be the president next year. And of ASES, and was the ABOS.
She was my board examiner.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, I remember her from that.
And she's,
she was nice to me though.
She's a chair of a department, and you see these women.
She's still in Hershey.
Yeah. Yep. In Penn State.
Penn State, right?
And you see someone like that sort of breaking every boundary.
Oh, and April's great. She's
and
wonderful.
I think the idea is just if we can create an entity where we empower each other and we can be honest with each other, but we lift each other up, as a society, I think shoulder surgeons, there's a lot of incredibly successful shoulder surgeons that are women. And that makes me so proud because even though the numbers are low, the productivity is high.
Sure.
We just did a study that we're talking about regional training and productivity for shoulder elbow surgeons. And both of them were equal. The only thing that we maybe don't have a sort of exactly is the number of middle author publications, senior author, junior author. We're there with guys. We're there with you guys on committees and service, and and so the men and women are not distinguishable in our society. If anything, we're all leaders,
Sure.
and everybody's highly.
Yeah, we feel. I mean, everybody feels that way.
Yeah.
We should collaborate.
Yeah.
I feel like that's pretty strong sense of culture these days around here.
Yeah.
How much of your time do you spend doing advocacy or doing mentorship versus clinical practice, and do you still do research?
I do it all. I love that. I'm part of the AAOS BOC, and I am the Florida Orthopedic Society's incoming president next year. And so I really started my career, and I think in your career and in life, you have these phases, right? These things. So, when I was
Definitely.
really early in my career, I really...
Every 10 years for me shifts.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the
major.
priorities, your focus, your energy.
Your outlook.
Yeah. And so advocacy was one of my early passions. And, I just think without that, our profession, I don't know if you know, but, we are one of the only professions that our reimbursement has gone down year after year. We've lost 30% of our income from what we got 10, 15 years ago.
Sure.
And so we have to be a voice to tell people, although, doctors are successful, we still work hard, right? And
we're going to work hard.
And we feel like if inflation is out there, we should also be part of that. And we haven't ever gotten an inflation raise. Our Starbucks coffee has gone up, but yet our salaries have not changed, have gone down.
Right.
So, I think being an important voice to say to politicians, to people, to patients, that we care, but we deserve to be sort of compensated and paid, and we work hard for that. We take as good care, if not better, than we did 10 years ago.
Do you think there's a role for having, more involvement from a surgeon perspective, and maybe even having... I know we have the AOS advocacy groups, but that's where a lot of these changes have to happen. Is they go through legislation. Otherwise, nothing moves. It's just us complaining about things.
Yep, that's right. And that's why you have to go to the Hill. You have to talk to your politician. We need more doctors as politicians.
Right.
We need that. ASES as a society was honored as the best society for the AAOS political advocacy.
Well, we are the best.
We are the best.
We're definitely the best.
So I do think that push, what Joe's done for advocacy, what we've done with our foundation, I do think that we are realizing you have to be at the table.
Sure. Yeah, and getting the word out about the shoulder specialty as well with the foundation. Ron has done some good work with the foundation in terms of just getting the word out at all these different locations all across the country. Those have been really nice get-togethers for young, bright minds that need role models that are shoulder specialists, and just to know there's people out there that do this type of work. Because I had a mentor that really helped me and guided me. I said, "Oh, that's what I really want to do." I didn't know it until I saw Reza Omid at USC. I worked with him, and that's what I wanted to do. I just knew that's the kind of work I wanted to do.
But it's not even just for us as mentor mentees, it's for patients, right?
Sure.
Our patients, advocacy goes out to that, to know that our training, this rigorous stuff we do, the shoulder specialty matters.
Right.
That I spent a year doing complex, hard stuff, and I spent 15 years continuing to learn that.
Exactly.
That my training matters, and you should maybe consider really taking that into account when you're a patient.
And what do you think there's a role for our society to make a public perception shift towards the shoulder specialty from a patient perspective?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Because, I think the problem if you know anything about sort of the shoulder world is, there are hand specialists doing shoulder, there are sports specialists doing shoulder. There's a lot of people that get exposed to shoulder.
Exactly.
But I think when it comes to certain complex things, our training in that specialty really is it's not even just the training, it's the continual training that our society pushes, these courses that we put on the annual meetings. But it's really the level of rigor that we continually do that I think as a patient, I would hope you would want from your surgeon.
That's the kind of surgeon that I would want, definitely. Somebody who's looking not just at how things go in terms of what we expect normally, but really pushing the boundaries of getting excellent results. And that's really what I'm after in my practice as well.
Yep. And you're probably continually evolving it, right?
Definitely.
You're always asking and looking. I track all my patients.
You need feedback to really know. Do you get patient-reported outcomes?
I do. I do. I think for me, I'm in private practice, right? And so I am so passionate about research because I think I want to see that clinical relevance. I want to see how I can always do things better. How can I advance my own patient care? And so I've been tracking that, and I pay for my own research fellow. I pay for my outcomes database, but it's just a commitment I have to my patients, to myself, to my practice, to my community that I've just made and said, I don't have that academic infrastructure, but I still think what I can talk about, what we see every day, matters.
I'm very similar in that way. I think it's important enough. We as surgeons should be looking at our outcomes just over across the board, even if you're not doing research on them, so you know how your patients are doing in an objective way. What do you think the future holds for us? How do you think things are going to change?
Well, I think
2 years, 10 years?
We have to reach out. So, I think from a societal level, if healthcare continues to go the way it does, I think there's huge ramifications, right? That we're consolidating care to big organizations, right? It is extremely difficult.
And that's taking the control away from the surgeon's
Absolutely.
hands.
And from the
patients. And the patients don't like that.
Yeah.
My practice now, the patient finds me, how do I schedule an appointment? Oh, I go here, they meet me, I treat them, then they go home. Yeah. They're very happy.
Yeah.
And that's the direct, that interaction is the key, is that patient to doctor interaction.
And there's not layers, right? There's not layers to call the system to centralized thing.
Right.
So it's not in Japan where or Asia where you put your scheduler, you're doing it right there.
Right. Yeah. And that's how these corporations grow, and they're looking at the bottom line. They're looking for they're looking at their margins, and the care is part of the organization making money.
Yeah. And I think that, large organizations can provide excellent care.
Sure.
I just think that healthcare itself is just going to a more commoditized industry where it's not about the people.
Right.
The two people at the end of it is a patient and a doctor.
Right.
And then your insurance company, and then your big organization, all these layers. But ultimately, that's really why we took the oath.
Exactly. And that's one thing I think that's important not to forget, because we can get bogged down by the grind and the difficulties. And then we start looking at our patients as the enemies. And it's like, hey, we're here to treat you guys, right? And so I've definitely kind of shifted as I've kind of changed my mentality on high quality and not necessarily always high volume, right? But if you can manage that and maintain the quality, then that's fine. But that's something that I think alludes to being a happy surgeon, is having a good setup and having a happy life. How did you become a happy surgeon?
Well, I think I was really lucky. It's funny, that you look back in life and sometimes you say these obstacles became rewards for me. Yeah. But, I didn't get married young, and I didn't have that benefit, and when you're a female Indian girl, pretty much every family member thinks your life is over if you haven't found a mate and had kids. And so, it was a real, difficulty, but I really focused on my residency on getting surgical skills. And my early part of my career is building an academic career and advocacy and involvement and research. And so I really, didn't have that family. I didn't have that mate, didn't have those kids. And I thought my life was pretty much over. So, I think that detriment has been such a blessing because I got to get married at 38, have kids in my 40s, and I have time for them. I have money and resources. I have my career built. I don't have to worry about my surgical skills because I know that I've built them. And so now I have these two beautiful human beings and a great husband. And I just feel so gosh darn privileged, to be a mom now, because it's like I didn't get that early, so you don't take it for granted. And so I just treasure every moment.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's and I'm a father too as well, and I did it the opposite way. Yeah. Right? I had kids really early, and so I went through that, and it can be great either way,
But you probably enjoyed that so much. You probably enjoy them now.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, it just gets better, and you don't always have to sacrifice your career for a family. You don't have to sacrifice your family for a career either, though, and you shouldn't. But, you sound like a planner, and you kind of plan things out. It sounds like you kind of had a life planned out.
Well, I didn't plan not getting married.
Didn't plan it.
Yeah, no.
But you focused on what you knew was important and the things that deeply matter to you and what you can control. You can't always control who you find in your partner, but you have an outlook on things that I see that keeps you very grounded, but also allows you to grow, and I just really enjoyed talking to you. I know everybody has great things to say about you.
Well, I appreciate it.
And I'm always happy to see you and talk to you. So
thank
thanks
you
for
so
spending some
much.
time on the show.
Thank you for plugging your Med Mom, which is our new thing that, we're doing. And just, I'll end it with, you leave your legacy wherever you want it. So leave it well.
Definitely. Well, nice talking with you, Vani. I know you got other engagements to get to, but it's been really fun having you on the other shoulder.
Thanks so much.
All right, thanks. That's all, folks.